all-you-can-eat buffet employees, what is the most disgusting display of gluttony you have witnessed? I don't work at a buffet, but I was that guy. I'd been backpacking on the Appalachian Trail for a couple months. It's a 2,100-mile hiking trail that runs from Georgia to Maine, along the US Appalachian mountain range. Been eating nothing but ramen and instant oatmeal since Gatlinburg. I was getting hungry, okay. I was having dreams about meat. So my friend and I hiked down from the trail to this tiny town, Catawba, Virginia, that only has one restaurant, the home place, all-you-can-eat fried chicken. We walk in. We sit down. A waitress brings us a platter of fried chicken and a basket of homemade biscuits. And whenever we start running low, she brings another platter. It's not like most buffets, where the food's crappy and watery and sugary, but at least it's unlimited. No. It's the best damn fried chicken I've ever tasted. Crisp and juicy and greasy and just perfect. Me and my pal gorge on fried chicken. Eat at least 5 pounds each. I'm starting to feel very uncomfortable, so when the waitress shows up with the next platter, I wave her off. She clears the table, and then she comes back carrying a moth of faking blackberry cobbler. So we polish off the cobbler. It would have been impolite not to, pay our bill, grab our backpacks from the foyer, and stand on the porch, contemplating the 1,500-foot climb back up to the trail. And it becomes obvious that there is no conceivable way we are climbing back up to the trail tonight. So I go back inside and ask the hostess if there's anywhere to camp here in town, and she tells me, "You're welcome to sleep in the gazebo out back." Apparently, this happens all the time. Edit. We were not the only hikers in the gazebo that evening. These 2 other dudes came in later and ate harder and had to sleep it off with us. Been working in a Chinese buffet for 6 years. Here's my top. Kid putting chocolate pudding in his plate, licked the big spoon used for pouring it, the one used by everybody, and put it back in the pudding. I saw him and had to change everything. Guy about 18 years old at the ice cream counter, didn't have time to react, and puked in the ice cream cans and on the floor. Looked at it, said nothing, and just walked away back to his table. Drunk dudes coming at around 6 PM. They ate full plates in like 20 minutes and puked everything under their table. We had to move every client out of this big section, capacity of about 60 places, because the smell was so bad. I was the one that had to put a mask on to clean everything. Extremely fat guy brought a big bag of candies, kind of Smarties, took it out of his pocket, put a shit ton of them on his desserts, and put the candy bag back in his pocket. I was his waiter and I think he told me about 4 times that we should have these candies in the buffet so he wouldn't have to bring his own. Old lady putting a plate full of chicken wings in her purse, probably to bring back home or something. No bags, nothing, just bare chicken wings directly in there. A regular client asking me where was the coffee flavored cake. We have a rotation for desserts, so that cake wasn't there that day. I told him, and he asked me if I could get some for him in the back store. After he insisted like 3x, I finally gave up and grabbed a piece in the fridge and gave him. We charge the drink, $2.50, but it's all you can drink. We see plenty of people drinking about 10 full glasses of Pepsi, and they complain when I bring the bill, and we charge them $2.50 for it. Some even insisted to talk to my manager. We served takeouts, and someone came to get his order. He looked at the buffet and asked me, "Do you think I could grab something to eat real quick?" while smiling. We often get this asked as a joke, so naturally I play their game and answered yes, of course. The guy literally walked over there, took an entire egg from our salad bar, ate it in one bite, then came back to pay his takeout. I had no idea what to say, and he just left like that. I probably have more, but those are the most obvious one. We have to deal with puke at least once a week, usually kids though. I don't even care anymore and find these situations rather funny. Edit. Just thought of another one. We have an employee who does omelets and eggs on demand, and one guy came and asked my coworker for eggs over. Naturally she asks 1 or 2, and the guy answered 8. She initially thought it was a joke, but the guy wasn't laughing at all. She finally did all 8 eggs for him, and he ate them all in like 2 minutes. Edit 2. The buffet is located in Quebec City, Canada, so stop guessing random buffets around the country. Edit 3. First time getting gold off of a comment. Thanks. I could do an Amma as well one day. Obligatory, not an employee, but I ate at CICI's Pizza recently with a friend and it really made me not want to go back anytime soon. I think the highlight of the experience was an incredibly obese woman who just finished several plates of pizza, and when one of her family members mentioned she should probably slow down because of her high cholesterol, she said it was okay because she made a salad, and then proceeded to point at a bowl that was so overly saturated with ranch, croutons, bacon bits and cheese that you couldn't see a single bit of green in the bowl. As the conversation unfolded and she continued to argue her point with the people at the table, I was shocked because there was 3 major holes in her logic. 1. She assumed that by eating something healthy it magically cancelled out all the unhealthy food that she ate. 2. She believed that her ranch soup was healthy because everything with the label salad is automatically healthy. 3. She thought that just making the salad gave you all of its nutritional benefits, that you just have to appear to eat healthy to actually be healthy. She never actually ate the salad, but kept insisting that I ordered one, so it counts. Had a friend who worked at the Golden Corral for college money. Most of his stories are mirrored here. Vomit, fat people, kids licking spoons. The only thing I can add is that he said fat people often don't eat much more than normal people. They just eat higher calorie portions, like drown their chicken wings in ranch soup. And that's just fine for the business, because the cost of many high calorie items are much cheaper per pound than healthy stuff. Bad chicken tastes the same as good chicken when deep fried. Cake and soft serve are mostly air. The worst, he said, were people who took food and stuffed it in pockets, purses, backpacks, or whatever for later. He said there were repeat offenders they routinely had to throw out, but they eventually came back when the management changed. They knew those places had high employee turnover. Offenders were the elderly and large families with lots of kids. But the worst I recall was this: wikipedia.org/1984 Ajnishi_bioterror_attack. Not an employee, but a guy started shouting at me / everything around him because I was struggling to cut a piece of pizza to put it on my plate. Was in a Pizza Hut that does the all you can eat for £7 buffet, and they had just brought out fresh pizza, so everyone's warmed up and formed an orderly queue. I was at the front of the queue and the pizza I was trying to get a piece of wasn't cut all the way through, so I tried to use the little spatula that they give you to cut a slice off this pizza for myself, which definitely isn't easy. So there I am, struggling to cut a bit of pizza with a queue forming behind me, and up walks this absolute giant of a man. He was about 6 feet 4 inches, and, I don't mean anything bad by this, very fat. He completely cuts the queue and walks up next to me, basically burning a hole in the pizza I'm trying to cut with his eyes. At this point the people behind me have been waiting about 10 seconds for me to cut this slice of pizza. This guy staring at me / the pizza makes me really nervous, and I start fumbling even more trying to cut this slice, and he says, very loudly, "AWW, for fuck's sake, how long is this going to take?" People start looking over, and I just look at my friend who is next to me in the queue with a deer in the headlights look. At this point the guy's friends get up from their chairs and walk over to him and try to calm him down. "Calm down, man. It's only pizza. I know it's only pizza and that's why." I finally managed to get a slice cut off, and I just rocketed back to my table. This guy is still ranting and raving about how long I took getting pizza. Here's the thing, there were at least 4 other pizzas there that he could have went for, but he wanted the one I was at so bad that he felt the need to skip the queue and then shout about how long one person was taking to get a slice of this specific pizza. Edit, TLDR, a guy went nuts because I took a while to get a slice of pizza, and for everyone saying he's right and it shouldn't have taken me that long to get a slice, the pizza wasn't properly cut, and I had to use one of these to try and cut off a slice. Imgur.com. Sorry for formatting. On phone. I went to a Brazilian steakhouse once. For those unfamiliar with the custom, it is all you can eat salad bar, and then you sit at the table and the passadores, or waiters if you want to be dicks about it, bring out perfectly cooked and spiced meats to your table. They ask if you would like to try some, and cut you off a small portion. The passadores pass through in rotations, until you move a small place card on your table from green to red. When it's red they pass you by, and you can eat and talk and flip back to green at your leisure. I love these places, however they are fairly expensive, so I can only go on my birthday or special occasions. You also tend to dress a bit nicer as these are cloth napkin style places. So with all this in mind, there I was, on my birthday dressed fairly well with my friends and family having a good meal. In the booth across from us sat a man. This was no ordinary man though, this was a man on a personal mission, to destroy this churrascaria through the force of eating. He was there before us, and wore workout pants, an extra large shirt with no sleeves, flip-flops, and I shit you not, a visor. Like one of those green visors you see people who pretend to be accountants wear. Luckily for my party he was after us in rotation, however he made sure to humph and grumph every time a passador stopped at our table, and gave a slice of deliciously cooked meat to one of the people at our table. This sheet is cold by the time it gets to me, he would complain. So the passadors altered courses, and made sure to hit his table first. No big deal. After all, let this one dude get his meat, before they serve our table of 6. It was no skin off our backs and everyone in my party was fairly well fed and contemplating sending up the red flag of surrender to the men bringing us the row after row of meat. A few of us were still getting meat every now and then, but the entire party was dying down. However, the dude in the visor was still going. He was eating meat like a T-Rex, barely even chewing. He asking for double portions every now and then swigging some choice beer. He went for the nicer imported beer. This dude was an eating machine. Now he was already extraordinary enough to have my curiosity, but this is the part of the story where he gets my full attention. He had just finished some more meat when he looked up at me, made eye contact for what felt like an eternity. He was looking right at me, but not seeing me. His eyes were staring off and getting large. He looked panicked, stood up suddenly, ripped the visor off his head, heaves over at the waist and covers the floor in the most impressive amount of vomit I have ever seen. The sound of the vomit hitting the floor was loud enough to overpower all the ambient conversations and noise of the restaurant. 2 of the girls at my table screamed and stood up. One of my friends dry heaved. I thought for a brief moment he would sympathy puke, which would have caused a goddamn chain reaction of puke so gnarly it would have made the news. Luckily he held it in. The manager came, and several janitors followed and cleaned it up almost immediately. 1 with carpet shampoo, 2 with buckets, and 1 with some trays. The bus boys sprayed some air freshener, and it was as changed the table linen. All in all, good job covering up this massive biological crime scene we all witnessed. The man in the visor was moved to a table in the back. He did not leave. He did not leave. He simply sat down at that new table and flipped the little card from red to green. TLDR, I witnessed a Roman incident firsthand at a churrascaria. Not an employee, but I have an experience that is very relevant. I was enjoying a meal at an all-you-can-eat sizzler buffet in Brisbane, Australia a few years ago. I went to the toilet and entered a stall, doing my business, when suddenly I heard these disgusting gagging and gargling sounds in the stall next to me, like someone was sticking their fingers down their throat. Grossed out, I left the stall and started washing my hands. As I was doing this, the stall door swung open and out walked one of the most obese men I had ever seen. He was wearing an oversized shirt which was ripped at the bottom. He had no shoes on and his mouth and hands were covered in vomit. Instead of washing his hands, he just walked straight out the toilet back into the restaurant. I followed him out and watched in utter disgust as he went straight to the buffet bar and starting piling food on a plate, using his hands to touch everything. I went back to the table to tell my friends what had happened, and we all left the restaurant, but not before informing the staff what had happened, who apologized and told us that guy came in regularly. I was staying for a week at a high-end hotel in Jakarta where we were staging an event. As we were working in the ballroom setting up, we took all of our meals in the main dining room of the hotel, and over the course of the week we got to know some of the servers. They all started whispering and giggling one morning, and when we asked them what was up, they told us about the Tay-Tay, rich major wife, who would be showing up that day for lunch and the spectacle she'd be making. It seems that they had an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet that they featured every week, and this Tay-Tay was infamous for her gluttony. Sure enough, one of the servers gave us the high sign when she walked through the door. A fat lady dressed all in Hermes, Gucci and Prada. topped with lacquered hair, slathered in makeup, and dripping in gold jewelry and attitude. The Tay put on quite a show, heaping several plates with sashimi and sushi, shoving the food into her mouth like she hadn't eaten for a week, chewing with her mouth open, snapping her fingers for the server's attention, and generally making an ostentatious pig of herself. It was quite the show. Sadly, it was before the days of Yahoo banned smartphones, but it was the most vivid memory I have from that show. I worked at a Sunday buffet in high school, late 90s. It was $7 a person. I could tell you some stories. We essentially charged them, brought drinks, then bussed the table. My favorite was the 400-pound lady who would come in by herself, ask for 4 glasses of milk, and wave you down whenever she finished one for a refill. She would eat about 5 plates of our macaroni and cheese, probably the worst thing on the buffet, at some point slam all 4 glasses of milk, then proceed to puke milk, cheese, and noodles all over the bathroom. She would then sit and drink milk and eat macaroni for another hour or two, then leave a handful of change for the tip. We all drew straws whenever she came in for who got to clean up the mess. One day she came in, and I only gave her 1 milk. She said she wanted 4, and I assured her I would bring another one when she was finished with the first. She insisted that the rules say I get as much milk as I want. There were no posted rules. I refused and ended up getting written up for not being hospitable. From that point on I would just drop a gallon of milk on her table every time she came in, which she usually finished, but refused to clean up the puke mess. Whenever my boss tried to get me to do it in her passive-aggressive way, I'd say, maybe we shouldn't offer unlimited milk refills if people are just going to puke it all over the bathroom every week. Not an employee, but I'll share a story about someone who my mother and I once invited to go to a buffet with us. So this guy, we'll call him Mark, he accepts our offer to go to a local Chinese food buffet for takeout. I don't know if most Chinese buffet places do this or not, but at least at this place, you could get a pound of whatever food you wanted for like $5 or something like that, and take it home with you instead of eating there. So the 3 of us split up to get what we want from the different buffet tables. And then I notice that Mark is walking around with his little takeout box in front of his face. I walk over closer to him, and I see him eating a faking watermelon slice right there in front of the buffet, and then he sits the remains of the watermelon back on the buffet table. So I'm like, what the fuck? But I don't say anything right away. Then he walks down to those Chinese donut things and pops one into his mouth. And then he walks over to the chicken wings and starts eating faking chicken wings and putting the bones back on the buffet table. So I go over to my mom and I'm like, do you faking see what Mark is doing? And so she goes over and peeks and starts scolding him under her breath. He's like, it's fine. I do this all the time. So then mom walks away from him, pissed off. And then one of the employees walks over to my mom. He tells her that he sees what Mark is doing, and he sees that we aren't happy to see him doing it either. So if my mom tells Mark to leave, they won't call the cops. So mom walks over to Mark and tells him to leave. He actually gets offended. Like, we are somehow being rude to him to tell him to stop eating off the faking buffet line and putting bones and sheet back onto it. So he actually puts some stuff into his container and walks it over to the front, where they weigh the food and you pay. The cashier is giving him a dirty look the whole time, but doesn't say anything. He pays for his own food, we pay for ours, and we walk out and get back in the car. So we are both like, we can't faking believe you, Mark. We are never taking you out anywhere again. Meanwhile he reaches into his faking pockets and starts pulling out goddamn chicken wings from his faking pockets. And as he does this, he actually says something like, so what? Those chinks are out to rip you off anyway. They deserve it. My mom nearly made him walk home. She was so faking angry, but she screamed at him the whole way back. TLDR, take a friend to a Chinese buffet for takeout. He eats off the buffet instead of putting it into his container and puts chicken bones and sheet back on the buffet, then gets angry when he gets called out on it, then blames the employees and says they deserve it. Ryan's Steakhouse in a small cheaty town in southwest Christiansburg. We had regulars These were families where even the preteens were over 200 pounds, the parents coming in at 300 to 400 pounds each. They come in and get a salad plate, a few dinner plates, and then a dessert plate, and then they start over. 4 faking hours and 6 hours on Sundays. We had all you can eat steak after 4 PM and the line would be 15 people deep at 3:45 yelling at us that their watches said 4 PM, so they wanted steak. We would point at the bigger's clock and tell them sorry, but we go by that clock. When 4 PM finally hit, the steak cuts weren't big enough. Each cut per management was supposed to be a little bit bigger than the palm of our hands. Maybe 6 ounces, but who cares? It's unlimited. No, that was not acceptable. The amount of rage we had to deal with was off the chain. These faking dumpster gullets couldn't be inconvenienced with multiple trips. The quality wasn't great, but I will say we ran a clean kitchen. If something got dropped or came off the grill/oven faked up, we trashed it, and the fruit was stupidly fresh. Not technically buffet, but I feel he kind of violated the rules to make it a buffet. Local eccentric walks into the Subway I was eating at. I can't remember what sandwich he ordered, but the crucial part was that he wanted everything on it. Now maybe that's not absurd, you think. Who doesn't like a bevy of veggies on their sandwich for free, right? But this guy literally wanted everything, every cheese, all 3 or 4 kinds of peppers they have, guac, salsa, and every single sauce, ranch, mayo, oil and vinegar, BBQ sauce, literally everything they have out on display went into his sandwich. It just became a pool of sloppy liquid bathing floating vegetables in a soggy bread shell. The sandwich artist, as they go by, could not even close or wrap the sandwich up. The guy proceeds to take it to his booth, where he didn't eat it like any normal person would eat a sandwich. Why would he? It's not even a sandwich anymore. But he scooped out all the drippy innards in his hands and globbed in all in his mouth like a living faking mess, and was thoroughly licking his fingers clean in between each hearty scoop of ranch/mayo/BBQ/pickle/pepper/onion fistful. That was the worst thing I'd seen in the realm of eatery. Not buffet per se, but back in my younger days I worked at Baskin Robbins, an ice cream chain store. People would come in with their kids and rack up a bill closing $50. As it goes, kids and scooped ice cream on cones doesn't go well. It was common for children to drop their ice cream and we'd simply get another scoop for them. You know, normal business policy. So this lady came in every Saturday and all 3 of her kids would end up dropping the cone with almost all the ice cream finished. The owner caught onto the scheme that the lady used to nod to her kids when to drop the cone. After like 2 months of this, the owner told them to use cups and he won't be giving free scoops for empty broken cones being dropped. The lady went off the rails, called 911, wrote letters to corporate, and she didn't rest until corporate sent an apology along with gift cards and ensured her that it's company policy to replace dropped ice cream. I worked there 2 summers, and when I left, she was still a customer and she always did the same thing. With support from corporate, she had gotten bold, and every now and again she'd purposefully drop her own ice cream or shake after finishing it more than 3/4 of the way. I wouldn't say it was disgusting at all. At this buffet they use smaller sized dishes. I think they read a study that said that smaller the plate, the less wasted food, and so people would just eat a little bit less. But old Butch here didn't care for the smaller plates. No, he kept stacking the food higher and higher on it. One time he targeted meatballs. He waited until a fresh pan was brought out, and then he went to work. The meatballs he stacked like a little tower, getting higher and higher as they pushed slightly towards the middle. He had about a foot in height of meatballs. It could have been the 8th wonder of the world. Another time he had snuck in his own plate, one that was larger than the others, just so that he could fit more on it without having to make more trips. At the end of it, he asked our staff to wash it and bring it back to him. We had to tell him he couldn't bring his own plate anymore due to potential food safety violations. Instead, he tried bringing larger paper plates instead that could be thrown out when they were done. Eventually he was banned because the store was losing a bit of money off of him. They put his picture up in the back on a do not serve wall. Well, eventually the store was sold to someone else. We removed all the other photos but his, and I put a label on it that said, "Hero." The new manager was a bit of a jerk, so me and another guy said that he had saved the customer's life from choking on it. which may have been possible if someone didn't chew before swallowing one of those meatballs. The rest of the old staff agreed with it, just so the man could eat into the profits of the new owners. I eventually found out that they were a programmer for Microsoft. They were just used to having to think outside the box to get more out of what tools that they had. In any event, he was a glorious bastard. I was working wedding functions. They had a buffet dinner, then later on a buffet late snack set. Two guys did something that day that showed me the depths of gluttony. Guy number 1 was a tall skinny dude in his early 20s, I assume a college student, from the shabby suit and greed that he showed me. Come dinner time he must have been determined to get his money's worth and went up a total of 18 times and each time came back with a full plate of meat and potatoes. There was determination in his eyes as he wolfed it all down, as his parents watched in disappointment as their son ate more than the rest of the table combined. I however was impressed at what he did. At least he wouldn't need to eat ramen for a while. The second guy however was a bit different. He was easily 500 pounds and was sweating as he sat down. It was painful and ever so slightly terrifying to watch this grotesque behemoth wobble up to the buffet with a plate in each hand, biggie eyes scouring the food looking for its next victim. This man ate us out of lasagna. That doesn't sound much, however it was a 700-person function with the equivalent of a pickup truck's worth of lasagna in the back. I watched him eat a plate, and it was less eat than inhale. Sweating profusely the whole time, this greasy smelly sweat that several other wedding goers commented on. His wife watched nonchalantly, as if his destruction of the lasagna was an everyday thing. The staff were contemplating throwing him out when it happened. The faker soiled himself. At the table he gave no sheets as he physically sheet himself. The assistant manager broke down crying whilst 4 security members attempted to carry this man out whilst he protested. One of the security members had a bad time however, as the vigorous movement of a human jello ball upset his stomach and the poor bouncer got covered head to toe in second-hand lasagna. That was the worst display of greed and gluttony I've ever seen. I have this story that needs to be shared, despite not being an employee. It's a long one, and it's grotesque, but this is literally the perfect topic for this story. About 6 years ago, several friends and I decided to have an eating contest at this Chinese restaurant. When I say I'm friends with some huge guys, we are talking every single one of them is 300, 400 pounds, and there's 5 of them with me, at 201 pounds. As soon as we walk in, the host kind of shudders nervously, because he knows that whatever he's about to witness, none of it can be good. He still seats us, albeit reluctantly, and asks the manager to keep an eye on our table. What happens is exactly as expected. Plate after plate gets devoured and stacked within minutes. I even make a respectable showing of 7 plates, but it's a paltry sum in comparison to my friends. Most notably, these 2 brothers put away something like 14 plates apiece. People in the restaurant are marveling and staring at the combined stacks, as we had asked the waiter not to take any of them away till we finished with them all. In the end, there was something like 68 plates stacked. Everyone manages to hold it all down too. As we're sitting there, all waiting on the other one to get sick and vomit, no one does. Finally, we are like, well, let's get out of here and go into a food coma then. And we agree 3 of them decide they need to pee really badly first. We all head into the bathroom, laughing and commenting of the sheer grossness of what just unfolded. The first and most noticeable thing is that one of the stalls is totally clogged up with sheet and toilet paper. Someone did some serious work on that toilet. Our one friend heads to the secondary stall, while the others head to the urinals. After he finishes peeing, one of the brothers heads over to wash his hands, but slips on this huge pile of hand soap accumulated near the sink, and flops right on his back. The comedy of this reaction is overpowering. Everyone bursts into a fit of laughter. Even better, because of how slick the floor is, he just keeps sliding back down every time he tries to stand up. It's like watching a turtle that can't flip itself back over. Cue the nastiness. His brother gets into such a hysterical laughing fit that he starts projectile vomiting. He pukes into the sink and directly onto his floor-bound brother. The brother on the floor, between being puked on and the ungodly disgusting smell, starts puking horizontally along the floor. Between the 2 of them, they must puke up several gallons and pounds of food. Our friend who is on the sheeter can't even see what's happening, but he can hear it. He proceeds to start vomiting in the stall into his own pants while he's still taking a sheet. My friend and I, utterly appalled by what we are witnessing, run to get an employee. As the employee runs back with us, his eyes are in absolute horror. There's vomit everywhere. Between the brother vomiting horizontally on the floor and the one vomiting into the sink and the mirror and the walls, the bathroom looks like a war zone. The guy in the bathroom can't stand up because his pants are literally filled with chunky vomit, so he's trapped in there. The abject horror on the attendant's face is indescribable, and I cannot imagine how he felt. His reaction when he saw the one brother on the floor, covered in vomit and hand soap. He vomited along the wall and the trash can. The employee went to the front desk, grabbed a sign, and put up the out of order sign on the front door to the bathroom, and then wrote up another sign for the front door saying, "Sorry, our men's restrooms are temporarily out of order." When it was all said and done, it looked like the exorcist has vomited along the entire floor, most of the walls, the mirrors, into the sinks, and around the urinals. It was, to this day, the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. The kicker, there was a totally random guy in the last stall, who had never said a single thing, who just sat there for the entire ordeal in absolute silence. After the employee put up the sign, he walked out of the stall, looked at us, and said "Fuck all of you people," and just left. I haven't been back to an all-you-can-eat establishment that wasn't a Brazilian steakhouse since this day because of the horrible memories I have associated with them. I used to work at a Pizza Hut which served buffet at lunch. We had a rule that employees could take from the buffet at the end of a shift. One time we had a new guy join whom my manager really disliked. The manager was notoriously horrible to everyone, and you could tell right away that she had it in for the new guy. He was effeminate, sassy, and acted like he owned the place. Anyway, the end of his 4-hour shift comes during peak lunch, when every new pizza that comes out is immediately pecked apart by the customers. Manager hands him a box, flashes him one of those hate smiles, and says, "Help yourself to the buffet, my dear." He strolls up not to the buffet, but to the cutting table and slides 2 whole fresh pizzas into his box, then waltzes out. He didn't come back in. All the customers and the manager were fuming, but the staff were in stitches. I've never worked at a buffet restaurant, but I have a little buffet related anecdote to toss in. Back in the mid-90s at work, our department boss treated the dozen or so people on his team to a Friday afternoon buffet lunch. Our department had hired a new office assistant about a month prior to this buffet lunch, and our new colleague, a woman in her early 20s, had generated a fair bit of water cooler gossip since her arrival because she was one of the skinniest human beings any of us had ever seen. She was really skinny. Painfully skinny. Concentration camp skinny. Everyone, myself included, assumed she had an eating disorder. So we go to the buffet restaurant, which I think was Asian. After the first round, a couple of people stopped at one plate, but most of us went up for a second, including, surprisingly, the new assistant. With the second plate done, everyone switched to dessert and coffee, but our super skinny coworker came back with a heaping third plate of sides and mains. After a couple of minutes of distracted chit chat, everyone on the team completely abandoned civility and just openly stared at this near skeletal young woman wolfing down her third plate. After about a minute of this localized silence at our table, she lowered her knife and fork, gave a big sigh, and then wearily explained to us what she's probably had to explain to gobsmacked dining companions 100 times before, that, no, another big sigh, she was not anorexic, but that ever since her late teens she had suffered from a very unusual metabolism that so far various doctors hadn't been able to diagnose. And that she needed to eat this much food most of the time, just to keep up her current weight. She also added that a few months ago her family doctor had put her on cholesterol meds because her cholesterol was so high from the considerable caloric intake of her regular diet. Ever since that particular buffet luncheon, I have tried to make an extra effort to withhold my layperson's reflexive medical judgment on anyone's apparent body size. When I was 15 I worked as a busboy at an all-you-can-eat buffet. While working one afternoon, with hardly anyone in the restaurant, this family of 4, all morbidly obese, and looking like they have not showered for a week, come in and proceed to stuff their faces, as one would expect. As busboy one of our jobs was to check washrooms every hour. Just as I'm walking to check the men's washroom, one of the sons from this family is leaving the washroom with the biggest grin I have ever seen on his pudgy face. Still haunts me 14 years later. Upon seeing this, I immediately have a bad feeling about what I'm about to witness. Sure enough, the first stall I check has a massive amount of explosive diarrhea splattered all over the toilet tank, the wall and the floor. There is literally sheet everywhere, but the toilet bowl. It looks like someone let off a bomb made of sheet on the toilet seat. I grabbed some tongs and paper towel and tried to clean it up, but there is just too much sheet, so I go to my manager to show him. He's a bit of a hard ass, but one look at this mess, and he closes the stall and tells me that I don't paid enough to clean this up, and that the night janitor will clean it up. I still feel really bad for the guy that had to clean it up. Super late to this thread, but I have a pretty good story. I'm a fry cook at a seafood restaurant and we host bus tours that make a stop at our restaurant on their way to Foxwoods. We are located about 30 minutes from the casino. We have a buffet for them in our banquet room with all you can eat lobster, steak tips, stuffed flounder, shrimp cocktail, plus pans upon pans of different vegetable sides. This particular story happened when I was still a dishwasher, but it goes like this. First off, this particular tour bus had started in New Orleans, went east to Florida, traveled up I-95, and eventually made their way to us. One of their many stops along the road trip. The patrons on this particular tour were mostly in their 50s to 60s. A few were accompanied by their adult children and a few of their families. Around 45 people hike. When I say these people were dressed nice, that would be an understatement. They were all dressed in their Sunday's best, from baby blue suit jackets to tasteful purple pimp-esque suit. Some of them looked similar to this guy or were wearing something similar to this. They definitely had a Steve Harvey type look to them. So they end up having a great time. I mean, with all you can eat lobster you're bound to gorge yourself into bliss, then eventual regret and sleepiness, like any buffet. After their meal they stuck around for another half hour to 45 minutes walking around a bit, before leaving for the final stretch of their coach bus road trip. Right before they left, some of the women grabbed their purses/handbags and went back over to the food. We usually let the party eat their fill, and we leave the pans set up for a little while after everyone leaves, so the employees can go over and make themselves a plate of leftovers. So these ladies all start grabbing the lobsters and stuffing them into their purses. One woman had thought ahead and had brought an empty plastic grocery bag, but the majority of the women just stuffed them in their bag like it was no big thing. Nothing crazy happened, like fighting or anything, but my manager explained to them that it's not all you can eat plus a meal for later. That's not how buffets work. They could keep the lobsters one already in their possession. We couldn't do anything with them at that point, but they couldn't continue filling their bags. So they stopped, then went on their way to Foxwoods. What's really weird to me is that besides that one lady with the bag, all of them were going to have lobster juice all up in their handbags and sheet that they carry around everywhere with them. Once they left, they had no way of cracking the lobsters, let alone having them warm, having drawn butter for them. If they did get them open, they were going onto a coach bus with like 45 to 50 other people. It's not like they were going home after their meal. At the casino these people would all have their bags either on them smelling like low tide, or back in the bus festering in the heat. They still had to travel back to New Orleans with the nastiness in their bags. It was weird that even these people dressed super nice in their Sunday's best would stoop down to stuffing their pockets at the buffet. All very nice people. Very lively, funny, and most of all respectful even when confronted about stealing the leftover lobsters. It was just bizarre seeing them put dripping wet lobsters in their bags. So late to the party. Also not an employee, but something disgusting I did once. A casino I live near has a buffet, and on Friday nights they have crab legs. I had just gotten home from my seasonal job, where I had been eating ramen and mac and cheese for the last 6 months. I was in need of a good meal. Anyway, like normal my dad and I decide to see who can eat more crab legs. As I go up I noticed a really cute cook behind the buffet and we're giving each other the eyes. This continues each time I come up for like 3 plates. The more I come up to pile a mountain of crab legs on my plate, the less interested and more disgusted I can see him getting. I do not care. I'm eating my first real meal in months. I feel like a caveman who was just introduced to cook meat for the first time ever. By the time I was trudging up to get my 5th plate of crab legs and had butter stains on my shirt and probably dripping down my face, dude is refusing to make eye contact anymore. Won't even look my way. I'm a small girl, and I'm sure he was thinking I had manners and a normal appetite. He was wrong. I ate 6 heaping plates. Dad did 7. I still feel like a winner. Me. I was 14, at a friend's birthday party. His grandparents had paid a lot of money to get all his friends out to Pizza Hut. We had full buffet and dessert bar, but only 1 drink each. We all thought it was pretty fair that we paid for our own drinks. We started, as only a group of young teens can do, challenging each other to see how much we could eat. Plates absolutely filled with cheese pizza covered in french fries with carbonara sauce. That kind of thing. And that was all fine and dandy. No one got sick eating too much, and everyone respected their limits. So we have calmed down somewhat, and my mate has just discovered that you get 4 cups worth of drink for the price of 2 if you buy a jug. Fantastic. I buy a jug of Pepsi Maximum in preparation to share it with the table, and then my mate dares me to scull the whole thing. And being a 14-year-old, at the tail end of an eating competition, when a drinking comp spontaneously develops, of course I say yes. I have a good crack at it too. I'm about 9/10ths of the way through the jug, able to see the finishing line, when my mate says something that will change the history of the world, forever. Dick cheese, he says it again and again and again. And then the rest of the table joins in dick. Cheese dick. Cheese. Now I'm not yet laughing. I can see the tactics they are trying to use to destroy me. But then I consider exactly how funny it would be if I did tank it due to dick cheese. This sent my 14-year-old brain into a classic giggle loop. This caused me to snort/vomit/project through mouth and both nostrils everything consumed in the last 90 minutes up and down the table. From my position at the end of the table, I didn't quite reach the birthday boy at the other end, or even really splash the other guests, but all the food and drink was lost forever. I remember getting some in a cup about 2/3 up the table. Most of it was indigested, so the smell wasn't so bad, but the staff member serving us had this look on her face, like she was witnessing the absolute desecration of her favorite holy site. Meanwhile, when the table was done laughing at my/the management's misfortune, we all got up, picked up clean plates and new food, and migrated to another table. I'm late, but OMG let me repost one of my very first comments that I made on Reddit. From r/to from Eosivor, I'm in charge of setting up the free BUFFET =. Every single morning guaranteed I will witness someone putting their bare hands into the food instead of using the tongs, even refusing to use a plate, and carrying the food in their hands. Someone taking armfuls of the free sachets and holding them in their bag to take home later. Someone complains about the free food being too dry/spicy/wet/salty/sweet/dull, while someone else complains for the opposite reason. Someone complains that we ran out of one kind of food for about 30 seconds. Someone will eat their food at the table, leaving crumbs and filth everywhere, to the point that the cleaners now make a special trip here around the time the buffet closes. On the rare chance that we do have a item with limited availability, people will overload their plates, so others miss out, but then will eat only a few bites and leave it on the table. My manager has started making us personally watch these items and spoon/tong it to the customers, because they can't be trusted to take a human-sized portion if they know it's a limited item. Someone will ask the bar staff for milk despite there being a large jug with the word milk on it at the buffet. Someone will say something racist to my Asian co-workers if they are running the buffet and run out of food, usually mocking their accent or something nasty about them not being born here. Ironically, often these customers are foreigners. Too many people leave the packaging from the food all over the buffet table, despite there being a rubbish bin easily visible 1 inch from the table. When the buffet closes, people often come up to the bar asking for food. When we show them the menu, not free, they often ask for free food. When we say we don't have any, about 50% of the time they will empty the mint bowl into their handbag/pockets. My manager has stopped us putting more than a handful of mints out at a time for this reason. My manager has since told me, you work with gamblers, you should not think these people will act human. The buffet is only open 2 hours. Rant over. Few edit. Formatting and added more stuff customers do explained in comments. So, I worked at a Brazilian churrasqueira, which is one of those places where you sit at a table and servers come by with various roasted meats on a stick and then carve off portions for you. The genius of the churrasqueira is the massive salad bar that you get before the meat comes along, which fills you up so you don't eat too much expensive meat. But we had this one family, mom, dad, 6 kids, that had figured out the system, their exact words, and would just sit at their table waiting for the meat. Everyone hated them because they would always ask for more portions than you were supposed to give at a single time and would always smirk and say, "Yeah, we know the system. We know what you guys are doing. Just give us the meat." And then they'd proceed to eat an absolutely epic amount of meat. They particularly targeted the more expensive cuts, like picanha and tenderloin, and avoided the less expensive stuff like chicken. The managers had an ongoing war with them, but infuriatingly, never kicked them out. So yeah, a family of 8, eating nothing but hundreds of dollars worth of char-grilled meats every few days. I wonder how their house smelled. Not an employee, but was at a Sis's once and observed a woman whose booth shoulder had steel reinforcement. She had a pile of plates about shoulder high, sitting down, and about 3 to 4 plates full of pizza she was working on. We were waiting for the fresh cinnamon rolls and we were going to pay and leave this beach. We are not in a hurry because the place is empty, so we don't think anything of the lady walking up to the buffet. Then we noticed she's trying to get the attention of the staff behind the buffet for extra whatever sauce, egos and cinnamon rolls. When she turns around we see that she has 2 plates piled high with cinnamon rolls. We go to get ours and realize she had taken them all. An entire pizza-sized tray of cinnamon rolls with extra sauce. When we were paying we asked about her, and apparently she's a regular. Comes in, spends hours there, eats probably 8 to 10 pizzas, plus a few trays of cinnamon rolls. Murica. I'm not an employee of a buffet, nor have I ever been, but the most disgusting and also saddest display I have ever seen was when my parents took my 4 cousins and their mom to a Golden Corral for the first time after they rescued them from an abusive asshole. When I was younger, buffets were a fairly regular thing for us. We had a system for taking turns to keep someone at the table and plate management and that kind of thing. Family of 5 at a buffet, you're gonna have a few plates. These kids, they had nothing like that. They had no idea that you could get more plates, so they piled their plates like a foot high. Potatoes, veggies, fruit, meat, gravy, pizza, desserts, everything. And then they just tore into the stuff like animals. No silverware, no napkins, nothing. It was like a freaking feeding frenzy, and I'd never seen anyone eat like that before. Like someone was going to take it away if they didn't eat it fast enough. Later, 3 out of 4 cousins got terribly sick and puked their guts up. It was an unpleasant experience, and we didn't go to any buffets with them again until one of those same girls got married years later, but that is a story for another time. Back in high school my friends and I got high and went to a buffet called Asian Top. We had already eaten and were just being stupid at the table. This heavy couple comes in, guy twice as big as the woman. She starts going over to the dinner area and looking around. Yeah, no, choosing what she wants, getting a little of everything kind of like a normal person. The man goes straight to the ice cream. Skips dinner and right to the vanilla ice cream. I'm baked as a kite right about now, and like 15 or so, and I could not look away from this man's journey. He no joke puts nearly a whole half gallon of ice cream, probably more, onto his plate. Like circumference is about a foot, stacked at least 5 inches tall. He gets back to the booth behind us, and yeah, no, starts eating the ice cream. After a few minutes, the woman gets back to the table with a normal-ish plate of food. At least something I wouldn't have mentioned as being a lot of food at a buffet. She sees her man with the ice cream mustache and a plate of half-melted ice cream and just says, "What the hell? AWW, shut up, I didn't want supper. Do you really need that much ice cream at once? It's melting." My friends and I lose it. Start laughing all together like a group of 5 high 15 to 17-year-olds. Then we left. not a buffet employee, but during my time working at Walmart last year it could have been a buffet. I worked in the frozen/dairy section. On this particular day I happened to be department manager stand-in for both departments. My DM/supervisor was on vacation. I was in the frozen section in between two rows of freezers. Along comes this large man in a wheelchair, his skinny wife in a motorized scooter, and 2 or 3 kids divided between them hitching a ride. Both of their carts are full of bakery and produce section foods. Bags and containers of hot food, grapes, apples, etc. Now, the dairy section at my store was at the far end, while the deli and produce sections were by the front entrance, meat department and dry grocery in between. These people had rode up every single aisle, eating their food, as though it was free everything day at this point. Not a single fellow associate of mine had taken notice of the situation. I'll let them continue, not saying a word, because we technically aren't allowed to due to a grazing law or something. Here they are, grabbing some frozen food. They turn right at the end of my freezer row, toward dairy, and the other side of the main freezer line. They hit up the butter. In goes a few 2-pound containers of margarine. Riding up on the yogurt, daughter picks out a flavor of Go-Gurt she likes and pops it open right away, handing some to her family and tossing the violated box back on the shelf. Guess what is after yogurt and cottage cheese and sour cream? Juice. Of course they grabbed a gallon or 2 of Odge. Then on to the milk doors where they decided on 2 gallons of brand name chocolate milk. Literally the most expensive brand we had, by margin of at least $3. Now, I can't really blueprint my dairy area here for much cause, but after the milk doors was the wide end wall of the store, where cheeses were at. They turned here, grabbing some and heading back toward the front. I watched them pull into meat depot, which was closed, and throw away every single food item they'd eaten into or drank. I swear to God these people could have eaten my family's, 5 at the time, bi-weekly food haul among themselves. They ended up proceeding to the opposite end of the store to steal some health supplies, where they were actually caught and banned from the store. I was 10 when I went to Golden Corral on my brother's birthday. After finishing my second plate I decided to go to the bathroom. I'm chilling in the stall trying to relax when this man, we'll call him Butch, enters the adjacent stall. I should note that another man, who we'll call Tyrone, entered the other adjacent stall, but Tyrone's not important right now. The first thing I notice is Butch's feet. They're hairy with very disgusting toenails, the ones that look like tree bark painted yellow, and entirely chaffed. I didn't realize that he was facing the toilet because of those feet, so I had no warning to get out of what was soon to be a war zone. Apparently Butch, God help him, decided to stand up in front of the toilet and puke into it. It wasn't like SeaWorld, where they identify a splash zone, so I wasn't ready for the bile to come from over and under the stall walls. I swear he must have been puking like the girl from Exorcist. I used my hoodie to cover myself. It was a hand-me-down from my brother, so I could easily fit my entire body into it, and I pulled the strings to close the hood. The smell was awful and the guy Dutch opened the entire bathroom with the stench. I'm halfway to throwing up myself when I see it. The sight to send me over the edge. Through the tiny hole in my hood I see this man's disgusting feet covered in barf. I proceeded to paint the inside of my hoodie, almost like a young warrior following the alpha male in this tribal bathroom. Moments later I'm making my way out of the stall, very slowly. Butch is spitting into toilet, muttering sorry repeatedly. This is when Tyrone comes into play. Tyrone is hurriedly trying to wash his hands and cover his nostrils when he can. He sees me exiting the stall, and I'm standing there for a moment before a big glob of puke falls from the interior of my hoodie. Tyrone reached his breaking point. Now he's throwing up in the sink. By this point other males have alerted the janitors, and they're swooping in. There must have been 5 mop buckets sitting outside the bathroom when I finally made my way out. This whole time my family was sitting at the table. I even missed the birthday song and dessert they had for my brother. But I didn't care. I just wanted to go home. So 3 different stories, all 100% true. First one, I once witnessed an old man, at least 70 years old, throw up underneath his table and continue eating. Was with his family, and no one seemed fazed in the slightest. It was my job to clean it up, but when I went over there, they told me it was fine. Ended up making the new guy clean it up. Second one, a family of rather obese people came in to eat once. Not only did they each have 3+ full course meals, but they also went through about 10 loaves of bread. Was the first and only time I saw someone be cut off from food. Third one, this dangerously obese man used to come in, pay, sit down, and just grab a plate full of those butter packets. He would down them so fast, it permanently made me nauseous whenever I look at butter. Sometimes he'd go get some actual food to mix it up, but he always ate dozens upon dozens of those butter packets, squeezing them into his mouth. BRB, have to bath under a table. Tales from the other side of the counter, college roommate comes in and asks if I like olives. I don't. But just make sure I don't eat anything with olives for the next week at the pizza buffet place where he works. Why? Someone dropped a huge glass jar of olives. Rather than throw them out, the manager sweeps them up, washes them off, and assigns an employee to spend the rest of the shift picking out the pieces of glass. Manager leaves a stack of coupons for free drinks by the register to give out to any customer who bites into glass that was missed. You'd think that would be enough to get me to stop eating there at all, but it was the closest restaurant to campus. I had no car, and unlimited pizza / breadsticks / spaghetti and a medium drink with unlimited refills for $2. A bargain even back in 1985 was too good to pass up. Walked into a buffet just in time to see the server do a full sneeze on the tray of salad fixings she was putting on the bar. Turned right around. Walked into a Golden Corral, ordered the buffet, and thought the total sounded a bit high. It was 15 minutes until the steak buffet started, and I had been charged for that because I'd still be eating at the top of the hour or something like that, and that was policy. Whatever. I paid. When the steaks went up, I grabbed one. My server noticed and dragged her manager over because I was stealing steak. Manager tried to tell me I'd have to pay extra for the steak. I showed her the receipt and how I'd already paid extra for the steak. She demanded to know how I had forced the cashier to ring me up like that as it was against policy. Explained the cashier had told me this was policy. Everybody went away for a while and I managed to finish my meal in peace. On the way out, the manager told me something like you didn't do anything wrong, so we are not going to charge you extra this time, but don't do it again. Not an employee of one of these places, but will never forget the nightmarish smorgasbord I was taken to in 1984. I was going to college in Kansas City and my girlfriend's grandparents, who we drove down to visit in Wichita, wanted to take us out to dinner. So off we go to their favorite place, a giant buffet called Duff's Smorgasbord. Now most of these kinds of places at least require customers to walk around the serving lines or islands. But no, not Duff's. At Duff's you bellied up to the stanchion-like station, with dividers on either side, separating you from your fellow diners like some sort of demented reverse urinal stalls. In front of you, moving on a slow mechanical conveyor were inset vats the size of 5-gallon buckets or larger, each filled with various foods. Each giant vat had a big ladle, a shovel-sized spoon, or unwieldy tongs that you used to scoop gigantic portions of bland overcooked slop onto your similarly oversized plates on your tray. I remember looking around, stunned that there were numerous big serving carousels, each with these personal loading stations configured around them. Think baggage claim at an international airport, but higher and dispensing tons of mediocre food to a surrounding horde. And the clientele, the clientele. It was like a convention of the morbidly obese, poured into their polyester stretch pants and each with multiple plates, wedged and unmoving between these straining divider boards as the unremarkable repast word slowly passed them, requiring no effort on their part, moving only to reach out with their giant flappy appendages to retrieve a half-pound of some steaming vittle, deep-fried animal part, or goopy dessert. And then, randomly, they would disembark from their berth at the carousel, slowly turn and make their way to their table, where they set upon these great heaping piles of banality with great abandon. As I silently witnessed this monument to gluttony and mediocrity, I could only smile, as I knew that this was both the place and time when I was experiencing peak America. And in the 32 years since, this gustatory epiphany has never been proven wrong. Extremely late to the party as always. but I worked as a waiter at a Chinese buffet restaurant for 6 years. I lived in a small to medium-sized town in the south, so our customers are usually the same people every week. And I also worked once a week, because I was in college. So every Sunday there would be this one guy that would always be the first person to walk through the door. He was dirty, stinky, obese, had extremely long fingernails, and did I mention stinky? Honestly, I don't really care about the smell, I just worried about the customers that had to sit near him. The stench that he gave off was like bleach mixed with fecal matter that has been fermenting for the past century, as if it was some fine wine. We would try to get him to sit in the corner of the restaurant so that his smell wouldn't bother others, but he always chose to sit right at the entrance to the buffet area because it was convenient. We developed elaborate schemes to try to get him to sit in the corner, such as lying about the chairs and tables being broken. But nothing ever worked, so we gave up and bought several hundred bottles of Febreze so we can hose down the place after he leaves. So I forgot there were several times where he got up from his seat and I noticed a wet spot, and when I walked past the chair it smelled like sheet. So I'm pretty sure the buffet food is so good that he doesn't want to get up from his chair and walk the 15 feet to the toilet. There are so many other customers that just thinking about it makes me stressed. I never worked at a buffet, but I did work at an Olive Garden for a couple of years. No, this isn't a never-ending pasta bowl story, yet there were a few people who would ask for multiple refills to load up in to-go containers. Anyways, this old woman that weighed at least 400 pounds would come in anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes before closing to eat. She used a walker for the longest time, then started using a scooter. She would order multiple drinks, both soup and salad, an entire pizza as an appetizer, and at least 3 full-size entrees. It was sickening. She would eat extremely slowly as well, and usually stayed at least an hour or two past closing. Luckily, I never got stuck with her. One guy got fired at one point because he very audibly flipped out in the dining area after someone seated her in his section. I think the eating was a coping mechanism after her husband died. She had a very pleasant demeanor, aside from the fact that she knew she kept servers extremely late. She also didn't tip any more than an average guest. The whole situation was just weird. There was actually a rumor that she would eat at multiple restaurants in one night. That is, Olive Garden closes at 10. She stays until midnight, then would be seen at Applebee's or TGIF. There was also one time when another woman asked for an entire pitcher of Diet Coke and was completely serious about it. She drank the entire thing herself. Not me, but my husband was a chef in a new extremely upscale hotel in our country. I'm talking 1.2k a night in their normal suites, which would make you think the guests there are probably quite classy. He'd work the breakfast buffet on some days, which served international buffet. A man from China went to the congee station and starts shoveling black century eggs, 1000-year-old fermented egg, Google it, from the tray into his bowl. He ate so many of them within 20 minutes that he projectile vomited this dark grey sludge all over the floor. Century eggs have an ammonia smell, which is what the vomit smelled like, and my husband, who usually likes it, lost his taste for it immediately. He won't join me for one anymore. Another Chinese man came in for the buffet, surveyed the Chinese cuisine area, and started off with some dumplings. He took them one by one, but somehow decided it was taking too long. So he just picks up the faking tray and pours it onto his plate. Dumplings are going everywhere on the buffet table, and he picked those up and ate them right there. Then, as if deciding he would be a more courteous diner for the other patrons, looked around and removed 2 dumplings from his plate and put it back on the tray for the other guests. I'm late to the show, but here's mine. When I was a kid, 17, in the 80s, I worked as a busboy at the nastiest, cheapest, all-you-can-eat buffet in Reno, at the Circus. We lovingly referred to it as the botulism buffet. Anyhow, this older waitress would take sips of people's drinks on the way to bringing them to the customers, and she wore lipstick. It was horrifying. I'm also convinced that the fried chicken was recycled day to day, instead of being thrown out and start fresh every day. When the food was too old to serve, they would send some of it down to the employee cafeteria, and we got to eat it for free. I was an always hungry teenager, so I ate it, even though it was highly questionable. I only got sick once in the 6 months I worked there, but I blame myself. There was some kind of fried steak thing. I'm not even really sure what it was. It was yellow and black. I ate it. I had to go home early that night. I always wanted a jello square, but the chef dude never wore gloves and left his fingerprints on every single square of jello. Salt Lick, all you can eat barbecue one Labor or Memorial Day. 2 friends and I went to the lake. We grabbed a 12-pack, and one guy drank 10 of them. He's a bit of a douche, freeloader, and enjoyed the free beer. After a few hours of fun in the sun, we went to eat. Again, the freeloader, but still a friend. The other guy and I split his cost. We all 3 get all you can eat barbecue. Now I can eat, as can my non-freeloader friend, but the douche just put it down. I can imagine he figured that being unemployed, he wasn't sure when he'd eat like this again. At the time, I drove a Ford Ranger, W/the wannabe backseat. The seats face middle, not the front. This combined W/the beers and all the food. Douchebag started to moan. I got concerned and asked if I should pull over, and he quickly said now. So I pull over and stop. Instantly I ended up on the little island/curb thing between the main road and a turnoff. I'm basically parked illegally right under a street light. Now being a holiday weekend, late in the afternoon between the lake and Austin, a cop was behind us in minutes. I'm explaining the situation. Cops more checking me out to see if I'm drunk, and almost on cue, douche pukes just an unbelievable amount. Cop jumps back, laughing how it almost splattered his shoe. Second cop shows up, and they just marvel at the size of pile of what's basically ground beef. Soon as a dude stops puking, his first words are "damn it." This solidified my suspicions that he ate so much the intention of not spending his $sign on food for the rest of the day. As soon as a dude started puking, cop just instantly lost interest in seeing if I was okay to drive. Scene turned joyful for everyone minus the douche. I was even told good job by the cops, as that mess inside would have just ruined my truck. TLDR, all you can eat BBQ after lake and beers. Pukes enough that cops don't give me a ticket. I've been this guy, but my age was still in the single digits. TLDR, went to all you can eat breakfast buffet with Santa in my town. Ate so much I passed out in a snowbank while we were getting our Christmas tree. Okay, now for the story. As you could guess, this was a breakfast with Santa deal where it was an all you can eat buffet. Then, after eating, kids would sit on Santa's lap. Simple enough. Well, I stuffed myself stupid. The story may have been embellished a bit by my parents, who love this story, but apparently I had 3 heaping plates of breakfast foods before I finally got so full my head was rolling around in a stupor. I had shamed myself, but I was alright at this point. It was Santa that did me in. You see, Santa had a little tray of treats for the kids after they had sat on his lap, and I asked my mom permission if I could have one. Just pick a small one, she said with a concerned look on her face. Now, I'm sure you could tell what kind of kid I was at this point, and I got myself a personal pie from the tray. Well, apparently that was the straw that broke the camel's back. After the breakfast, my family went to pick out a tree. I went missing, and my parents found me passed out in the snow. I had eaten myself into a mini coma. Not literally as far as we know, but hey, I would imagine if something was going to push my blood sugar to dangerous levels, well. The family joke was that my body decided to shut me off before I ate one of the trees. I used to compete as a powerlifter. Years ago, myself and 2 friends were gearing up for a meet, and we were dieting down to make weight. We drove out to the hotel and checked in and went to get weighed. All 3 of us made it, but keep in mind at this point we were severely hungry and dehydrated and barely lucid, exhausted. We stumbled our way to a Chinese buffet. I shit you not, the management looked at the 3 of us when we walked in and put us in the very back, away from all the other customers. It was like she knew what was about to happen. We walked past the food like wolves looking at a crippled prey. As soon as we sat down, it was mayhem. I counted 35 crab rangoons. My one buddy took the entire tray of coconut chicken and the full container of those sugar-covered fried dough balls. The other one destroyed the sesame chicken. They couldn't even keep the general tso stocked, or the little crunchy chip things. I finished off their sweet and sour chicken and waited for them to refill. We stayed there for an hour and a half, not even talking, just devouring everything we could find. It was one of those times where we weren't even enjoying it. We were just in primal mode, like we forgot that we could leave food behind. By the time it was over, we could barely walk. We just limped our way back to the car and got to the hotel and passed out until the next morning. I worked at a remote camp in Saskatchewan and our breakfast was buffet style, but we had people portioning the food accordingly, and if someone wanted a little more, no big deal, or if they just wanted one thing, no big deal. We were reasonable in terms of portions, seeing that we were feeding over 1,000 hungry construction workers a day. We got the one guy. He looked a bit disheveled, quite unhealthy looking. He'd come up to the line and say he didn't want any eggs or omelets at all, which was fine. He then asks for some bacon, so we give him a tong full of bacon, about 4 to 5 pieces of bacon. Then he asks for more on the plate. We put a bigger tong's worth, over 7, then asks for more, and I just look at him kinda weird and give him a heaping pile, probably 6 or 7 more. He then asks for 7 pork sausages, 3 beef sausages, 4 sausage patties and like 4 tater tots. Absolutely ridiculous, but our chef opted as our food was paid for by the potash company and he wanted every client happy and didn't want any grouchy emails. It was a goddamn mountain of meat and a smidgen of tater tots. This guy did this for 16 days straight, and the kitchen staff actually had a bunch of guesses of when he'd fall over. There were other clients that were pissed at him because dude would always show up at the rush and clear us out of bacon, so we would be making more or just finishing off new bacon. We cooked over 35 pounds of bacon a day and this guy went through easily 3+ pounds of it, cooked, at breakfast. I'm pretty sociable, and I knew a good chunk of the guests, so one day in the rec area I asked a couple guys if they knew him, and one guy said he never saw him in camp outside of breakfast, which is weird, because in order to get breakfast you needed to be staying in camp. They said they were just pissed he took all the bacon at the rush and never asked the guy about it at work. One of the grouchy old ladies I worked with was kinda pissed about it and actually asked the security guards at the entrance to the dining room if he swiped to get in for some ridiculous reason. The chef had no restriction on how much food his clients didn't gorge themselves and were happy with the food, gave good feedback. It actually turned out the guy wasn't even staying in camp, he was on a visitor pass. So he bought a visitor pass at the front desk for $5 for breakfast, which only entitles you to the salad bar, which had 9 different tables, over 20 options to choose from and sandwiches and custom subs, 2 brown bags total. Apparently he was getting a plate of meat for him and his dog and a pile of salad bar stuff and a sub for his lunch. If he wasn't such a meat hoarder he wouldn't have been caught. I think he got fired for stealing essentially. TLDR bacon. Not an all-you-can-eat employee, but my job has lunch catered every day and the amount of free food people take is sickening. Lunch is supposed to be at 11:45, but at 11:30 a handful of gluttonous sheetfacks head down to stock up on free lunch, as if it's their last meal. In addition to the usual 2 plates stacked on top of one another filled to the brim with food, here's some of the shit I've seen. A lady took 4 pieces of bread, covered them in American cheese and ranch dressing, and then dumped almost the entire container of bacon bits for salad on the bread, and then stuck it all in the microwave. On days when we get Chinese food catered we get about 60 soups, half wonton half egg drop. I've seen this same fac on multiple occasions filling a plastic bag with about 20 soups, and then take them back to his desk. The salads people make at my job are a joke. Here's the recipe. 1 small handful of lettuce, a cup of croutons, half a cup of bacon bits, half a cup of olives, half a cup of ranch dressing. It's really obnoxious when my company is nice enough to get free food catered and people can't be considerate of others. Edit. I almost forgot. Sometimes there is a line for. This was like 30 years ago, but I still remember it like yesterday. A good friend of mine had her big bonus from her boss for a very profitable year. She was basically given 1 year's salary as a bonus. So she decided to treat all 20 of us for a good meal. This was 1990 Singapore. The best place at that time was Tiff Chinese restaurant that had this order as much as you like from the menu. Proper menu, not some buffet cheap stuff. So 20 of us arrived and sat into adjoining tables. We basically told the waiter to bring one of everything on the menu. Then somebody suggested that we should have a race between the two tables, just to make things interesting. Chickens, ducks, pork, beef, fish, prawns etc. arrived and gone within seconds. The whole night flashed in a blur. At the end of the meal, I felt really uncomfortable. In the end, a few of us threw up right at the front door of the restaurant. Can you imagine the sight of a group of people doing synchronized puking at the front door of a 5-star restaurant? The worst of it all? There were whole prawns and big pieces of pork and beef among the debris. We were so competitive that most of us swallowed the food whole without chewing. My wife and I witnessed a funny event at a Chinese buffet. We went around 1 PM on a Sunday, and as we were seated we noticed a 12 top of very well dressed black people. Like they had just come from church dressed. They weren't really eating anything but there were all kinds of cups and plates on their table. Basically it looked like they had been there a while. A couple of their kids were running around screaming and acting like assholes as well. Parents seemed unconcerned. At some point, while we were at the buffet line we noticed as 3 or 4 of the Chinese staff gathered together talking rapidly and shooting eye daggers at the table in question. We ate a leisurely Sunday lunch, maybe 45 minutes, and were getting ready to leave when we hear the commotion start. One of the Chinese people, owner probably, goes over to the table and says in a loud accented voice, "You stay too long. You leave now." Holy shit, it was like WW3 started. The people at the table start yelling back, one large woman at the top of her lungs about they can do whatever they want as they had already paid the bill. So we stayed and watched this drama unfold for a few minutes. It wasn't too crazy till one of the little black kids runs up and kicks the Chinese guy in the shin. Suddenly 12-15 Chinese appear from the back and rush the table. I thought we were about to see a WWE type brawl. At that point I think they got the hint and began to stand up and head for the door. Then the cops show up, ask if they want to press trespassing charges or assault on them. It was surreal. The black folk were real apologetic suddenly, and the Chinese guy was like just yo. So everyone leaves, and shit goes back to normal. We overhear one of the waitresses bitching about them not even leaving a tip, haha. It was nuts. Sorry about the Wallow text. One of my co-workers is about 5 feet 8 inches and 500 lbs. Maybe more, actually. He shows no shame or remorse in his binging behavior. A few examples. His locker at work is covered in Crown Royal 1.14L labels. He brags about his binge drinking. His doctor reportedly told him in his early 30s that he'd be dead by 40 if he didn't lose weight, and upon his 40th, he then began to brag about how wrong his doctor was. There's this restaurant in Vegas that has a scale at the entrance with a giant display above it. If you're about 400 pounds, you eat for free, all you can eat. He posted pics of himself on Facebook, before and after on the scale. Finally, he won't go into fast food joints at work because he doesn't want to walk. He'll ask his partner to retrieve his order and hand over his bank card. Oh, and we work in an emergency service. It's a sad story, a tragic story. I feel bad for our stacker holders and our patients. I feel angry at those that enable him. I'm sure that my employers feel impotent because there's nothing in the contract that can force help on him and no performance standards written. Sorry that only a small bit of the story is all you can eat related, but I thought it was relevant. I worked at Ponderosa. Disgusting displays of gluttony was expected there, so it is hard to pinpoint one specific incident. That said, I'm reminded of how surprised I was that there were a lot of regulars who knew the staff and managers on a personal level despite Pondo being their only place of interaction. This one lady came in 3 times a week. Tuesday, when kids ate free, Friday when we had our seafood buffet, and one of the other more normal days. On Tuesday she'd bring her grandson with her, and they'd destroy plate after plate together. They'd stay for hours. The kid would often do his homework at the table as he knocked back entire plates of fried wings. As you might expect from eating almost nothing but fried food 3 days a week, this lady was enormous. She had a motorized scooter that I never saw her get out of. This was a problem, since many of her favorite things were out of her reach because of it. If the tongs or spoons were in range of her grasp, she struggled, but still managed to get what she wanted. If they were out of range though, she'd twist and contort in her chair trying to reach it. Think John Candy in a Cirque du Soleil show trying to grab a rope mid-air. Best case scenario is that she'd have her grandson with her, and he could help her. Otherwise she'd ask the buffet cooks for help, which no one wanted to do. We used to bang back in the feed prep/dishes area and watch her approach the buffet, like we were watching some gruesome episode of Planet Earth. I specifically recall watching her trying to grab packets of butter from the food prep area with a handful of my co-workers, all avoiding going out there, because we just didn't want to help her. After I graduated high school, I went away to college, but returned to Pondo to work for the summer after my freshman year. The lady was nowhere to be found, but I'll be honest, I didn't even notice it at first. One day, I saw her grandson up at the buffet line rocking a plate of ranch and wings, but not her. I mentioned to my boss that I noticed the lady was missing, even though her grandson was still coming by. She passed away a couple months ago, lalza cakes. Her grandson comes in now on his own once a week and does homework. I used to wait at a southern seafood restaurant. It was not a buffet, but this is worth telling. This ginormous couple comes in, so big they each need 2 seats apiece, to hold their giant ass, on either side of a 4-top table. Before every meal we served a pan of cornbread, a pint of coleslaw, and a small serving of pickled onions gratis. Now each of these were meant to be split by at least 2 people, sometimes 3. They had a full serving, as described above, each. We hadn't brought their meal yet, but they still weren't finished. Our most popular side item was easily our mustard greens. Savory and delicious. They split a large, which was filled to the brim of a 24-ounce container. For dinner, they both got their own seafood platter. Essentially, this is half portions of 5 different menu offerings: fried catfish, stuffed fried crab, fried shrimp, grilled shrimp, and broiled shrimp in a buttery sauce. It also came with hush puppies, several types of sauce, and a side of your choice. They both got the French fries. I swear on my life, they each ate their full platter, and did not leave a trace of any appetizers on the table. They also each completely drained a 32-oz sweet tea. We made it extra sweet, with several refills. Doesn't even have to be buffet. If you work in the food service industry you're going to see some disgusting shit. In the US in particular most people have absolutely no dining etiquette or manners. It's downright barbaric, worse than barbaric, most of the time. Chewing with the mouth open pisses me off the most. I was lectured about speaking negatively about our guests numerous times. It's appalling seeing a restaurant after a dinner shift. The sheer depravity of these faking apes mortifies me. Fortunately, I did work in a buffet. I have numerous stories of having to clean up after these goddamn animals. Food in the floor, spit, puke, mud, sewage, whatever filth you can imagine. People also frequently just shit diarrhea in the floor of your restrooms, not even in the toilet or even on the toilet. What pisses me off as well is there would be parties of 4 or more that would just waste tons of food. Make full plates, take a bite or 2, put them aside, and sample something else. Then probably get on the web and talk about how much our restaurant sucks. Plates upon plates, full of soiled food, that would now be wasted. So much food goes to waste it is mortally disgusting. Iraq vet here, not an employee obviously. When I was deployed in 2007 to Cobb's Beach the chow halls were run by KBR. They had a pretty decent setup and fairly high quality food, although it got old fast. Anyway, there was this civilian contractor, KBR I think, that we would see every day at lunch who seemed to be hoarding food. We called him the Rat. He wasn't obese, just slightly overweight. Every day he would show up in big baggy cargo pants and a vest with lots of pockets. He spoke mostly in grunts. When he asked for food in the deli line he would just say ham. The guy would give him a serving, and then pick up some bread and the Rat would say no, ham, more. Like he just wanted the meat and a lot of it. Then one time he pointed at the pickles and said that the most obvious hoarding was on his way out. There were refrigerators full of water, Gatorade, pop, juice, non-alcoholic beer, pretty much everything. He would load up with whatever he could fit in his pockets that weren't already filled. We never understood why he did this, because you could eat as much as you want, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It wasn't like he was a local desperate for food. He was a KBR guy from who knows where, but he certainly wasn't starving. Not an employee, but there is a nice buffet in the Northland by us 9 out of 10 times everyone in there is mostly quiet and responsible. Well, this mom, daughter and granddaughter are in on steak night. They were already in there eating before we sat down. There was a pile of plates with a good 3 inches of food stacked on each one. They were not eating even 10% of the food on each plate. It was pissing me off, because besides being wasteful, they were super wasteful, then grabbing so much food that others had to wait longer for the refill. One of the last plates was all chicken. They had a good 10 pieces on the plate. They ate one damn leg, then tossed on the other plates. And to top it off, their daughter, who was like 8, was dropping food like crazy. There was a huge mess on the table and underneath it. When it came time to leave, no tip even. Another time there was a crazy lady with her family. She had an anger problem or something. I didn't even eat my food, just watched in amazement. They sat down, eating like normal, but I noticed she would grab a napkin after each bite, wipe her mouth and toss the napkin on the table. She would sometimes grab 3 or 4 and do the same. After about 5 minutes there was a huge pile. The husband said something to her very quiet, and she flipped at him. She grabbed like 20 and kept chewing her food and tossing the napkins on the table. He quit eating and sat there watching her in disgust. The daughter grabbed some napkins from the dispenser. When the mom sat back down after getting some food, she flipped at the daughter for stealing her napkins and smacked her. It was unreal. We were done, so I did not get to see how it turned out. But you could see there was no soul left in that husband. His eyes were dead, staring over at his wife. Not an employee, though I have a good one. At an old country buffet, back in the day, I waited in line and people watched. I saw a woman who was the size of about 3+ people take 4 or 5 plates to her table. Nothing especially out of the ordinary, yet. I then see her proceed to a busing station and grab a large, circular waiting tray. She methodically arranged the plates so that as many as possible fit on the tray, and so that there was as little free space as possible. She heads straight for the dessert area and picks out a wide selection of just about every treat. At this point, it seemed like diabetic overkill, but she was just getting started. She took the tray with plates of desserts over to the soft serve ice cream dispenser. From there, gluttony took over. She pulled all 3 levers and proceeded to rotate the tray underneath, so that a mountain of ice cream flooded over the full tray. The desserts were covered in ice cream, and, once it was a good double layer deep, she took this lifetime of calories back to her table and consumed it like a pig delving into a trough. Around this time, my family and I made it to the front counter to pay. I lost my appetite. That's the story of the time I ate very little at an all-you-can-eat buffet. This is certainly going to get buried, but here I go anyway. As with most people in this thread, I'm not an employee, but I actually saw this with my own eyes. I was accompanied by my cousins, dad and uncle, but I wouldn't believe that hadn't I seen it myself. We went to a mom and pop buffet in Redneck region. It was ridiculously cheap and served only a limited variety of food. The place was populated with people so obese it looked like those satirical cartoons where they are just a big blob of fat that waddle instead of walk. The restaurant didn't have normal sized plates. Instead, the plates were about twice the size of an ordinary one, a slightly smaller circular pizza tray, so the regulars developed a strategy to fill their plates with the maximum amount of food possible. First, they'd pick up mashed potatoes and build, as in literally sculpt like one would do with clay, a circular ring on the outer edge of the plate. They'd build it high, like a half a faking foot tall. Then they'd put rice and beans mixed together as the foundation inside the potato volcano. When it was structurally stable, the next step was to pour spaghetti and sauce inside it until it was full. They would eat that as if it was a big bucket filled with spaghetti, but with the bucket being made of mashed potatoes. It looked exactly like those miniature volcanoes kids make for school projects, but bigger. The funny thing is that it wasn't just one person that was doing this. A lot of them did the same, as if copying their style. Some guys even repeated it. Saw this at hometown buffet while eating. A guy walks up to the cavalry and asks for a specific slice of roast beef. The worker behind the counter asks what he means. The patron then tells him to cut a huge slice. The worker goes back 3 inches on the beef and asks, is this big enough? The patron tells him to triple it. This guy gets half the roast. He puts it on his plate and goes back to his table. He then puts a huge glob of A1 on it and digs in. I decide to stay for the sole purpose of seeing how much this guy can eat. He finishes 3/4 of it before going to the bathroom. I follow him. He vomits. This guy then goes back to his table to finish the roast. He finishes it. I'm fascinated. I go to his table and talk to him. He will be RG, roast guy. Me, that's a big piece of roast you ate. You must be really hungry. RG, I'm trying to break a world record. I've been starving myself for a whole day to prepare for this moment. Me, which world record? RG, most beef eaten in one sitting. Turns out this guy was trying to break the W. Not an employee, but definitely witnessed a truly monumental accomplishment. There was this little Greek restaurant a few blocks from where I grew up. They routinely held breakfast buffets, prime rib or steak dinners and an all-you-can-eat gyro bar every Sunday from 10 AM to 2 PM. Naturally, we'd end up there on Sunday for a gyro or two. One random Sunday after a long harsh winter we decided to take a stroll and have lunch at the gyro bar. We walk in, pay our fee and grab a table. From where I was sitting I could see directly down the sidewalk. About halfway through my gyro, I noticed a guy in neon yellow running gear hauling us down the sidewalk. As he gets closer he turns into the lot of the restaurant and sprints right up to the door. Breathing normally, mildly sweaty. Dude is in solid runner's shape. 7. Gyros. Not 1. Or 2. 7. These weren't smalls either. The tray that contained the carved meat from the spindle was large, and I watched this guy almost take a quarter of that tray for each of his 7 Titanic sizes gyros. Took him about 25 minutes, and out the door he went. Right back to his run. My entire family talks about it to this day. Worked for supplementation/sweet tomatoes chains for a number of years. You'd think with it being a soup/salad chain, the clientele would be somewhat healthy. It's amazing how unhealthy people can be there. Just a few examples. Kids drinking ranch dressing from the dressing cups. Parents have said kids covering their salads in more ranch dressing than there is actual salad. Groups of kids would take cups and bowls and load them up with soft serve, sodas, sprinkles, jello, etc. and make these nasty concoctions and then not eat a single bite. Just leave them spilled all over the tables and then move to a different, clean table while the parents sat across the room ignoring them. Adults who think that just because it's gluten-free means it's healthy. Oh, this muffin is gluten-free. I've had 12 already. 2500 calories later. There are soup bowls, small, and salad bowls, large. Seeing extrememely obese people filling up the large bowls with clam chowder multiple times in one sitting. The memories. A coworker of mine who was older, around 47 though could pass for 60, who had to have weighed 300 pounds installed a wireless network for a hotel in Arlington Heights, right outside Chicago. We had a stipend for food, $40, so we would get the free breakfast buffet. I grazed. He ate 4 plates. On multiple occasions I suggested we get started, as we were honored guests of the hotel and we could always get whatever at no cost, since we were corporate. Then we would have lunch. He ordered a large pizza and ate the whole faking thing, while I would get a 6 inches veggie Subway sub. Dinner is when I would splurge, so we went to a buffet that sold beer. I felt I was being a glutton, because I had 3 plates, salad, main course, small dessert with a little bit main course, plus 2 vanilla stouts and a pilsner which I mixed to do some experiments with black and tans. That guy drank 4 porters and stouts, 10 plates eaten, then ice cream plus cheesecake and cobbler, then a handful of mints he popped like popcorn on the ride home. He died a few years back. Intelligent man, seriously, but he lived fast and died young-ish. Maybe someone can explain this to me. A while back I was at this beautiful brunch buffet, Chicago's second highest building. It was rather quiet that day, so we had the place mostly to ourselves. On the first go around, there were a few other people in the buffet area, and I looked at everything. I'd never seen a buffet like that before, and got some stuff to eat. Then I decided to go back for a second helping. My girlfriend wasn't coming with me. So I walked into the buffet area, and there was only one other guy there. So no lines, nobody waiting for anything. So I went through the area in a completely random manner, backtracking and filling up my plate to a reasonable level. Reasonable because, why overload it? I can go back as many times as I like. When I got back to our table, my girlfriend was completely mortified at what I'd just done. I still don't know what I did wrong, though. Was I too friendly to the other guy in the food area? He got a polite greeting. Should I only have gone around once? Should I not have brought my plate back when going for seconds? Did I pick up the wrong foods? I mixed all kinds of foods. I just don't know. Anyone have any idea? It's been bothering me for a decade. Maybe this will be a bit different, but just once, my husband and I went to a Chinese buffet on Christmas Eve. All of our family events were over till Christmas dinner, so we thought, why not? It's packed. I don't know why that was surprising to me, but we get seated fairly quickly next to this large family with a little girl in a high chair. The family is full of heavy people, heavy adults and some heavy children, but the girl in the high chair looks average/normal and maybe about 4 to 5 years old. It looked like an extended family situation. Anyway, at some point the little girl spills her drink on herself. The mom, or I assume it was her mom, yells at her. The little girl is crying and asking to go to the bathroom to clean up, and the mom basically ignores her from then until we left. The little girl isn't given any more food or drink, and is never cleaned up. Meanwhile, all of the adults are porking out and walking right by her miserable self for repeat trips back for more food, and all she gets to do is watch and marinate in the fruit punch. It was awful. Neither myself nor my husband knew what to do, so we did nothing, and I wanted to cry out of helplessness. I mean, I could almost understand not allowing more food if she'd already been fed. I don't know if she'd eaten or not, but to leave her in her sopping wet and sticky clothes on that chair while also simply. We pulled a dick move, only because the owners talked shit on us. Typically we got one order of the popcorn lobster roll and some random rolls. Well, they were out of most of the cheaper rolls we liked, so we started doubling up on the nicer stuff we liked. Well, the owners were Korean and started talking shit about us in Korean. Well, my brother and I grew up in Korea, so we understood it all, and we then ordered by price not by flavor, because they pissed us off. Then we left and talked to them in Korean, basically telling them heard them, and walked out. No tip, of course, only owners working, otherwise I would not have punished a server for the owners being dicks. Another time we made it to the playoffs in football, so the school paid for road trip meals. Well, we stopped at a Sizzler for the buffet, and we had a poor Hispanic on the team. Dude ate like 5 plates, and then went to his bathroom. Came out and loaded up a bunch more. I said, what the fuck, dude, you that hungry? He goes, fact no man, but it's so good I never get to eat this kind of food, so I just threw it all up so I could eat it again. Not an employee and not a buffet, but I had a girlfriend, thankfully now ex, who would go to the all-you-can-eat wings at a local bar. They got to know her. This is important because she went there every Tuesday for this event. She would only eat the drumsticks, but wouldn't even eat those. She would take 2 bites of the thick fleshy part, one on each side, and then toss it. So much wasted meat, it was unbelievable. They would just bring her the drumsticks, basket after basket after basket. Out of 5 dozen wings, she probably ate maybe a dozen's worth of meat at most. Why didn't the manager step in, you must wonder? Well, a couple did when plates kept being sent back with only small bites out of the drumsticks and no bites at all out of the wings according to her, but she quickly mentioned her name and they learned. Her father was a very influential and powerful man in the community with millions and basically owned half the zip code, including the shopping plaza where this bar was leasing the space from. Why would I give up such a keeper like that? I'm more a breast guy. I don't work at a buffet, I'm that guy. So I'm 15 to 16 years old, and there's a deal you can have at a buffet restaurant near me that's like £10/$15 for all you can eat. Point, this isn't like greasy food you see in Tay barns. This is full on Asian cuisine. So anyway, smart me realized that we were going out to the restaurant for our evening meal, so I had a small breakfast and skipped lunch. By the time we got to the restaurant, I was starving. I don't pile my plates, that's just disgusting and incredibly hard to eat with a knife and fork, so the next option is to just get out of your seat and get more. I had 5 plates, full of chicken, beef, pork rice, and noodles in the end, and then they come out with a joint of pork. I took a good chunk out of it, and I heard someone on the opposite table go, "This kid isn't going to eat all of that." Challenge accepted. I finished the entire thing, and I half expected the entire table to start applauding. Not an employee, but a friend of mine like Golden Corral. I live in a small city, and he lives in our hometown an hour and a half south. He lives paycheck to paycheck, because he won't budget his money. I was telling him how he needed to adjust his W-4, so his refund is closer to zero, so he has more money throughout the year, because he is always struggling. He looks at me and says, "But it is so hard for me to save my money during the year, if I have it." Which is a faking cop-out to being responsible. So he and his family like Golden Corral. He has a wife and daughter. I know how whole family. Once his mother, father, and 2 younger brothers came up with them. I try to eat healthy and don't like Golden Corral really, but I was invited and wanted to catch up. His younger brothers both ate 6 steaks. If you can call those cuts of meat steak. I don't eat much red meat. About 3 plates of other crap, and then one ate 2 desserts and an entire cotton candy. I've worked at Minado Sushi Buffet for about 9 years now, 10 come this November. Part-time, but I've seen some crazy stuff. One lady was waking around the counters with a Ziploc bag putting food there. Another time this beautiful skinny woman come in and would eat at least 3 full plates of food. After each plate, she'd go to the bathroom to hack it all up. Such a shame for her. There's this one guy that would get stacks and stacks of crab legs, take the time to crack them all, and put the meat to the side. Once done, he would get a bowl with melted butter, literally 50-75% full, and out the crab leg meat in the bowl to eat. Oh, he wasn't a big guy either. Another thing I would see all of the faking time is when customers would eat the fish on top of the rice and discard the rice. We used to have a policy where, if you didn't eat the rice, we could charge of extra. So instead of eating the rice, people would try to be slick, so douchey like put the rice in a soup bowl or wrap it up in a napkin, or mash the rice together, to make it seem like it was regular rice, and not sushi rice. Yeah, okay. We won't notice that sheet. I see people come in hungry and grab tons of sashimi, like they'd stack their plate high with it, eat maybe half and throw away the rest. What the hell? I can go on and on, but I gotta finish pooping. Not an employee, but a customer. Was many years ago, when I was 18 and a new Chinese all-you-can-eat buffet opened up in our neighborhood. My friends and I, 5 of us, decided to hit this place up and cause some serious damage. Being a new place a little out of the way, it wasn't too busy. Maybe 4 or 5 other people in the restaurant when we went. We start hitting up all the seafood, shrimp, lobster, and ribs. You know, the expensive stuff, not taking any rice or noodles. We each refill our plates about 8 to 10 times each time, telling the Asian attendant watching the buffet to keep it coming. The employees were beginning to get aggravated that they had to constantly refill the buffet and kept telling us to try the fried rice and the lo mein. On one of our trips we discovered that they had a soft serve ice cream machine at one side of the serving line. Having filled up on the good stuff, we each get a bowl and try to get as much ice cream as we could into the smallest bowls, quite possibly dipping bowls. One of my friends, after his 4th refill, decides he is just wasting time and goes to the machine and proceeds to do what I can only think to describe as half of a backwards cartwheel, grabbing the ice cream dispenser handle with one hand and the side of the machine with the other. He gets his mouth right under the dispenser's nozzle. Don't ask me how he managed to bend his neck to get the angle just right. We were too busy laughing our asses off, and just begins dispensing ice cream directly into his mouth, taking quick breaks to swallow. Needless to say, we were asked to leave the restaurant and never come back. We really got our $10 worth that day. Bit late. Someone might enjoy it. Includes fat man with big plates of food at a buffet. So here goes. When dad and his friends finished school they went on a mad trip down the Californian coast etc. and started said trip in Hawaii, which on the first day he saw some guys he knew from his school there. They didn't know of each other's trip. That's another story. One night they got pissed, probably baked as well, and went to an all-you-can-eat buffet. One of the tables near him was a big man, who they watched pile up his plate 6 foot high then place on his table, and waddle to the toilet. Dad decides to move his plate and sit it on the other seat at fat guy's table. Guy gets back, and upon seeing his food had disappeared, he assumed someone took it, and ate it, so he grabbed another plate, and went to fill her up. As he did that, Dad amongst bursts of laughter, put his plate back on the table. The guy finally got back, and was very confused at his plate, swore under his breath, and decided to devour both plates in one sitting. According to my father, most of the restaurant knew what was going on, and got a good laugh out of it. I don't work at a buffet, but I go to a lot of Chinese buffets with the family. If you see a Chinese tour group coming into any buffet, I suggest you go to another buffet immediately. They will literally empty out entire platters of food despite never actually being able to finish it. I'm talking 7 to 8 snow crabs on one plate or entire plates full of scallops. There was one buffet I went to that had amazing scallop dynamites, but each platter only had about 12 of them, and it would take at least half an hour to make them. I kid you not, I saw a guy waiting next to it, and as soon as new ones came out, take every single one of the scallop dynamites. Seriously, be considerate. I also saw some guy emptying out the salmon sashimi and oysters. I'm talking 20 to 30 slices of sashimi and 8 done oysters bigger than your fist. You're at a buffet, damn it. The food isn't going to disappear anytime soon. Besides, wouldn't the food taste better if you grab small portions of food each time, so they stay warm? Shout out to my cheapest Chinese dad who throws a beach fit every time I don't grab an entire plate of food for the family. By for the family he means himself, because he can't be bothered to grab 3 to 4 ribs or steaks for himself, and in essence, embarrass the shit out of himself. A relative of mine is also notorious for lining her purse up and stuffing it up with food. She can get a good 3 to 4 meals out of that. I honestly think that that's criminal cheapness. In the late 90s, my friend and I once visited a Pizza Hut along Durban Beach in South Africa. They were having an all-you-can-eat Wednesday. As we were active teenagers who surfed and mountain biked, and we had skipped breakfast, we were ravenous. We smashed our way through blissful slice after blissful slice. After this had continued for a while, the manager started to get a little twitchy. At some point, he said something to one of the waiters who was restocking the buffet. The guy ducked into the kitchen and came back a minute or so later with new stock of pizza, but something had changed, and drastically, the bases. They had switched from bases of regular thickness to bases that were about 2 inches thick. It was insane. Clearly this was their strategy for customers who took their all-you-can-eat buffet into negative profit territory. Being defiant teenagers, we decided to make a stand against the establishment, and so we piled our plates high, and when we got back to our table we scrapped the toppings off and ate those, and then threw the doorstopper bases under the table. The manager was so puzzled at our ginormous appetites. By the time we left, we were standing on a good few inches of base. They've been known to spend a solid 4 hours plus eating crab and lobster tails at the Rio Seafood Buffet in Vegas. My friends give me shit about this all the time. By the way, I should teach a class at the Learning Annex, How to Crack Crab Without Tools 101. Another time at a new Ace sushi spot, me and friend went to try it out for lunch. Server brought the ginger/visibility dish with a small side of sunamono. I asked for more sunamono as I love it, and my friend kept getting embarrassed saying that it was a garnish and to quit ordering more. I ordered so much sunamono they ended up bringing me a giant bowl. My friend about died from embarrassment and said I was a dick for eating a year's worth of garnish. Well, that story circulated amongst friends who didn't believe the amount of sunamono I ate. We just went back last month with one of the non-believers. The server totally remembered us, and this was like almost a year since we'd been back. She brought the ginger/wasabi dish without the sunamono. I asked for the sunamono. The server said no. Then she said, "Okay, for you extra charge, not ace." My friends were laughing, the non-believer stunned. Server went halfway between the kitchen and dining area. She glanced at our table, then back in the kitchen, then back at me. She walks back to the table and says, "Oh sorry, no more sunamono, we are out." I pouted. My friends roared with laughter. Looking around at other tables, everyone else was served the sunamono garnish. I was that guy. When I was 15 years old, I was 6'5" and my metabolism was insane. I went to an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet in Manhattan that was underground. It was huge. The buffet itself was a block long, not to mention the Chinese food they served. Anyways, I was there with my mom, and I told her I needed help bringing food to the table because of how much I was planning on eating. Basically, I would go to the buffet, take the whole plate of sushi, there was like 40 different types, and put it on my plate, and go to my table. I did this with a lot of different types of sushi, till my table had a huge pile of sushi that not even a family of 5 can eat, and I proceeded to chow down all of it all on my own. My mom got disgusted at the sheer number of sushi rolls I was scarring down my throat, and lost her appetite after a few minutes. After finishing my snack, I proceeded to get up and do it all over again and again until I had no space left and I couldn't get up to eat. But I still had space for dessert, who doesn't? And proceeded to enjoy 3 ice cream cones that were being served, vanilla and chocolate and strawberry, if you were wondering. If it wasn't a buffet, I would have probably eaten $500 worth of sushi, high quality stuff too. Not that cheap shit you get from Walmart. That was what really surprised me. And no, I'm not fat. I go to the gym regularly, and I'm like to eat often or else I get so hungry. Food is all I can think about. P.S. I couldn't stand the sight of sushi for the next 2 weeks after this delicious meal. Best $50 spent ever.